With my PNG app, I'll start by copying and pasting the content provided for the tutorial into it. I'll start with the Bitcoin, and I'll just scale it and put it over each of the ones that will have the surface of that coin. It's okay to have the orange a little bit outside the UV map because it's not a precise UV map. So I'll copy that layer and I'll put that one there. Now for the outside edge of the coin, we're just going to put a darker value of that orange. So I'll hit I on the keyboard, I'll select the orange, and in my color picker, I'll go over here and I'll click and I'll just make that a bit of a darker value. Putting in a new layer, I'll use my rectangle marquee and I'll just fill that with that color. And then for the dollar bill, we're going to make that a green. Now, use a bright color. We want these colors to be bright because in this context, we sometimes see the thumbnail would be something that would be on a cell phone. It has to be bright and colorful and engaging. I'll start with the default green for the RGB. And in my layer window, I'll add a new layer. And I'll marquee select the general area. Option delete on the keyboard, deselect and save. And make sure you put it in the same folder with the Maya content, and we'll put a darker value for the edges of that dollar bill. So I'll make a selection on the same layer, and with the green I'll just add a bit of a darker value of it, and option delete to fill it, and I'll go ahead and I'll save. Now what I can do at this point is I can go ahead and jump back into Maya and we can connect it. So I'll right click on the dollar bill, I'll choose material attribute, and I'll just go out and introduce that texture. And I'll hit 6 on the keyboard. So you can see all our coins have what we want on them. Now I can see that the coin on the inside is backwards, so I'm going to fix that. And I'll do that by making sure I'm in my object mode. I'll marquee select everything, I'll shift select to get the coin out of the mix. And now all I need to do is go to the UV editor and I'll identify which side needs to be fixed here. So in my UV editor, I know it's this one here, so I'll right click and choose UV shell. Because they're all selected, I'll marquee select to get everybody. And then I'll go to modify and I'll give that a flip. And that should rectify everything pretty well. I could have even taken the opportunity to rotate that differently. Maybe I don't want it to rotate in that direction. Then I could hit E on the keyboard and I could adjust the angle as well. And that should be pretty good. So let's jump back into Photoshop and we'll complete what we need to do for the dollar bill. Now I've got a chip grid here. We're going to copy and paste that in as well. So I'll hit Command A, Command C, Command W to get rid of it, then Command V to paste. And I want it to be a bit of a pattern for this whole area. Now this pattern's a little too tight, so let's scale it up a bit, and maybe we'll just scale that across the top of the bill about 200% perhaps. And then I'll just copy that. I'll move that down into position and I'll merge them, and then I'll copy that again and I'll just slide that down and cover the bottom part. Command E to merge them down. And now I'm going to find a blend mode where I keep that nice bright green, but I get that pattern as well. So I'll go over to normal, and if I click and drag over, I'll see the variations I can get on this, bearing in mind that I can also play with the opacity. I'll leave it at subtract maybe, and then I'll turn off my UV map, and I'll jump into Maya and I'll preview it to see if that's what I want. I can always come back and play with any of the other features I want with this, but let's just go back into Maya, and I'll select the dollar bill, right click, choose material attribute. I'll click on the link for the texture and I'll click on reload. Okay, so now that we have something like that, I think I might go in and play with the opacity just a bit. And then there's one other element I want to add to the coins. I actually want to put a white ring on the outside edge to make it more defined, because when we put a specular map on, it'll give a bit of a bump and make it look a more 3D instead of just flat. All right, so first we'll go back into Photoshop and I'll go to the texture, hit V on the keyboard, maybe I'll make it 50% and I'll save it. I'll put my UV map on again, and we're going to make a white ring to go just on the inside edge of each of these. So holding down the Command key, I'll click on one of them, and now I have my marching ants here. And I'll put a new layer in, and then I'll make sure white is on top for my toolbar. With my marquee tool selected, I'll right click and I'll choose stroke. And I'm going to make it on the inside, and I'm going to make it 20, I think. I'll see what that gives us. And then I could option with my move tool and shift and drag another copy to the other coin. And I'll deselect and I'll save. I'll turn off the UV map and save. Then I'm going to jump back into I'll right click, choose material attribute, and I'll reload that. And now I've got that white ring around the perimeter as well. Alright, so the last thing we need to do now is just put a specular map on. I'm going to be using Normal Map Online to do that. We'll generate our JPEG from our texture map to use in Normal Map Online. So I'll go to File, Export, Export As. I'll choose a JPEG, I'll max it out. And this is what we'll introduce to Normal Map Online. Now that I have Normal Map up, I'll go ahead and click on my JPEG and drag it into the box at the far left. I'll click on Specular, and then maybe I'll play with the range here a bit, give it a little darker value, and then I'll click on Download. Back in I'll go to my Material Attributes, and I'll scroll down. I'll open up Geometry, and for Bump Map, I'll introduce that specular map we just made inside of Normal Map. And if it seems too extreme, I can go into my Material Attributes. And if I'm looking at the actual file here and I click on this little box, here's where I can change the weight of that or the depth to increase or decrease. In the next video, we'll export our frame sequence and then we'll go into After Effects.